Welcome to Ask Andrew, where each week I answer a film-related question submitted by you, our BMFI viewers. This week, Brian asks, what do you think about the new representation and inclusion standards for Oscar eligibility? Well, I'm not all that surprised by them. They took their cue from the British film industry, the BAFTA, the British equivalent of the Oscars, and the British Film Institute had similar standards that on which the Motion Picture Academy, the Oscar people, base theirs. Furthermore, they have been making great efforts and I think achieving significant progress in increasing their diversity in the Academy membership. Ever since a number of years ago, the Oscars So White campaign began. Um, that has been a major concern and a major effort on the part of the Academy and, by and large, the industry as a whole. And I think that this is part and parcel of that. And on the one hand, it's not surprising, and it should achieve, at least by the time 2024 rolls around and the full standard is implemented, it should achieve at least an improvement across the uh, ranks, both in front of and behind the camera, in terms of a range of different identities and increasing their representation and the overall diversity of the industry. That all being said, it's not clear to me necessarily that this will mark very much of a significant or visible change for most moviegoers when they see films. And if we're talking about representation in movies in the American film industry and to the American and worldwide movie-going public, that's kind of what's most essential. Now, that's not the only thing the Academy is concerned with. They are also concerned with um, genuinely and legitimately increasing diversity among their ranks in production and behind the scenes and in all the different elements they have something to do with of the film industry. And I think this will do that. In fact, I think that a number of the ways to qualify for this new rule involve behind the scenes things in terms of the production company and the marketing, and that will have a genuine benefit for the industry. Um, my point in mentioning this is that one can make their film comply with these rules without it impacting what is seen on the screen. Now, there is some necessity for that, right? There are certain films set in certain times about certain things that um, might make including the range of diversity suggested and required by these forms difficult. Um, for example, imagine movies about the um, American space program. Not very many people played crucial roles in that. We know who those people were, and for better or for worse, we know the sort of cultural identities of those people. Think about a movie like 1917, and a World War I combat film, for example. Achieving on-screen diversity in a movie like that would be a challenge as well, which is why they have the rules to allow the films to be eligible that don't necessarily have to do with on-screen representation. I should say that this is only for films to be eligible for the Best Picture prize. That is obviously the biggest and highest profile prize, and the one that will most impact the film's sort of financial fortune and perhaps you know um, the career prospects of those involved, and it's the highest profile um, award the Academy gives, and in that regard, it makes sense that these rules would only apply to that film. Um, that leads me to believe that there may be certain genres, certain types of films that don't even really concern themselves with this uh, rule or meeting this standard because they're not likely to be considered for Best Picture anyway. I should also say that my understanding is that a form addressing the matters of diversity, and you can go to the Academy website and probably a bunch of other websites to find out the full sort of parameters of these rules, that there's a form that all productions that wish to be eligible for any Academy consideration will have to submit regarding how the extent to which they comply with these rules. Now, having to write that down and share that with the sort of industry's governing body may lead some people to make improvements, even if they can't or won't reach the level of um, of crossing the Best Picture eligibility threshold, or even if they know sort of their movie, isn't Best Picture material typically. And that can have a positive effect, just like somebody on a diet writing down everything they eat. They're sort of forced to confront what they're doing, and that can very often lead someone, or I guess you could say shame someone, into better behavior. On a sort of historical note, um, while I'm not surprised given the current climate and given the efforts the Academy has been making to increase diversity, I'm not that surprised that this has come about. Historically speaking, I'm a little surprised that the industry is making any sort of rules that even go near the area of film content. This is something that historically has been an issue for the American film industry. The American film industry, movies in America didn't enjoy First Amendment protection until the early 1950s, meaning at any time before that, they could have been regulated for content or any other reason by the federal government. And they have faced issues regarding censorship and self censorship um, moving forward from, well, throughout their whole existence, but even after they enjoyed First Amendment protection and didn't have to worry about government censorship, they had to worry about corporate censorship and self censorship. All the way through to the rating system's creation in 1968, which was supposed to relieve them of worries about self censorship. Now, it didn't do that entirely because films that would end up with an X rating or the equivalent of it very quickly became commercially unviable. So there was that parameter. But in terms of specific things that have to be included or shown on screen, that has historically been sort of anathema to filmmakers and to the industry as a whole. This is, in some ways, a directive to include certain things in movies or depict things in certain ways in movies. Now, again, there are ways around it and ways to comply with this rule that will have nothing to do with on-screen content, and that obviously has to be the case for certain types of movies, as we discussed earlier. But even the fact that that is there as an element, again, sort of historically speaking, with the industry's concerns about their content being dictated or mandated or regulated, it's a bit surprising. It will be interesting to see how this all unfolds and whether there are um, claims that these steps don't go far enough, that this rule is not substantial enough. And I can see how some people, a significant portion of people who are interested in the industry increasing its diversity may take that position. So this is interesting, and I think it's historically significant. And as I said earlier, I think it'll have some impact, at least around the margins. But what will really be interesting, I think, will be any subsequent steps that the industry does or doesn't take, or any alterations it feels compelled to make, um, given the specificities and the sort of potential loopholes in terms of on-screen representation that the current rule has. Anyway, it's a really interesting topic, and I'm sure we'll see more unfold moving forward. If you have a film related question you'd like me to answer, please visit the Ask Andrew page of the Film Studies Online section on brynmarfilm.org. Who knows? Next time, maybe I'll be answering a question you sent in.